Okay, I'm going to start the webinar. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Kabir, and I'm with Battleaver Research Group. I will be your host today. We are thrilled to have Kevin Stewart with us. He will be talking about profitable ranching. Before we dive in, I like to cover some housekeeping items. If you have any questions during the presentation, please hold them until very end. We have 15 minutes for Q&A. However, if something urgent comes up and you need my help during the webinar, feel free to type it in the chat section. I will be keeping an eye on it throughout the session. Without further ado, let's begin our today's webinar. And now please join me in welcoming our special guest speaker, Kevin Stewart. Kevin, over to you.
Well, thanks for having me. Hopefully, I can share some stuff of kind of the way my thought process that'll be useful for somebody else, and that's kind of my goal in life is to help other people succeed. I will say I was concerned about getting your name right, Kabir, I think it is, but I feel a little better about it because I actually my name's Ken, not Kevin. So now you kind
Okay,
of lifted the load there because I was afraid I was going to mispronounce your name. How do you say that?
it's Kabir. You got it right.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
yeah, awesome. So sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. None whatsoever. But no, so I'm happy to share what I know. I'm kind of just an old ranch manager. That's what I've done as a profession for most of my life. But I kind of got some things that work for me. It's nothing that I can take credit for as far as developing or anything. I listen to a lot of other smart people and I learn from them. I don't even know where this top or this we have a topic, but it was multiple topics for this particular webinar, and when I kind of sat back and tried to decide what to put on this first slide, this came to my mind. Simplicity is the key to brilliance, and that's kind of the way I see being able to do holistic ranching or whatnot, and I don't even know if that's a proper word to use, but I would say that makes sense with the way I operate. And I'm probably not the one that thought it up. I probably heard it from somebody else. So if somebody ever thinks that I copied them. I probably did. So that's just kind of the way. I listen to a lot of people. I'm always trying to learn, although I've managed large ranches across the United States mostly. I've been in the extreme southeast. The largest ranch that I've managed as a general manager was 12,000 head. And we had a fairly extensive staff and a lot to do on that ranch. And I've managed down smaller ranches close to 500 seed stock cows. And I did those for probably that was also in the southeast. And I guess I've only really ever had 3 or 4 managers jobs. And then when I got my son, when he got older and was going to start a family, we wanted to get closer to him, so I quit that job. And since then, I've been ranching on our own, which is on quite a bit smaller scale than some of my uh, professional jobs that I've had. But we actually, um, you know, we work together. My son's got some of his cows, and I got some of my cows, and we try to do things right. The biggest thing is no matter what level we're at, we want to make sure that we're profitable. We didn't inherit a big ranch or anything like that, so every dollar counts, and we can't just um, live off of the fact that our property is worth a lot of money. We run on a lot of leased ground and whatnot, so it takes us making sure that when we spend a dollar, we get something out of it, and when we also want to make sure that we raise some seed stock cattle, we want to make sure those cattle work for other people. So we also have to look at how we manage our stock based on that. So with that being said, what I call my ranch, this was just pulled off my website. You guys could find it if it's of interest to you, is XL Ranch. But XL Ranch, we don't do a lot of advertising for, but that's my brand, and that's the name that we go by for my wife and myself. However, we market our bulls with our son, and that's kind of a cooperative group. It's called Big Country Genetics. Big Country Genetics is mostly all composite bulls. We'll have a few straight Angus bulls, but it's the reason we named it that, and my son probably came up with that name. I can't take credit for that either, is because that's the kind of people we cater to. Our cattle need to be able to go out and work in big country and not fall apart. And we sell yearling bulls that right at a year old, or maybe even a little under a year old. So development's key, and we'll touch on that as we get through this whole thing here. I would encourage, I'm just going to kind of take a 50,000-foot view of my thoughts and my philosophies. And I would encourage you guys, if you have questions, we'll probably be done a little early. I don't know how much time is allotted for this, but just mark down your questions, and then we can have some good conversation afterwards. Actually, whenever I do presentations, I usually in person, and I do encourage conversations, but I know it's a little bit more challenging on a webinar. So I'll get through my stuff, and then hopefully we can have some good correspondence back and forth after that point. And the Big Country Genetics also has a web page you guys could search and find pretty easy. It's based in Wyoming. We're actually near Cody, Wyoming. The sale will be just outside of Cody. We have the sale on the first Saturday in April every year. Just to show you a little bit about myself and my family, I'm actually missing one family member, another grandson that's about a year old now. So this is a little bit of an older picture, but it's the last one I could find quickly when I was putting this together this morning that had my whole family except for Coy, the youngest, in there. My son, I don't know, I guess you can see this. This is my son Jacob. He's a lawyer in Rapid City, South Dakota. He's in his second year out of law school, and his wife Taylor. My son-in-law Danny, he actually ranches in, I guess you'd call it east central Montana, and he works with a big ranch as a kind of a regular day hand, as well as they have some of their own cattle. My daughter Kylie here in the middle, she's the one whose wedding we were at. She actually works with the government, like NRCS type deal, and she's out of Hardin. Myself and my wife, we've been married for 32 years, I think, this year. And then my oldest son here, Jimmy, he's got my two grandsons. He runs the Big Country Genetics side, bull sale, and the cooperative group of our bulls, as well as has a bunch of his own cows and helps us tremendously when we need help. The little baby here is actually 3 years old. He'll be all the pictures in this, I think, were pretty much came from our ranch, and you'll see pictures of Stetson that's a little older. His name's Stetson Stewart. And you can't see over here, but there's Shaylee Stewart, and she's got a pretty good social media presence, and she also works for DTN, and she's a beef market analysis. So that's what she does for a living, and she's a very good resource for us as we try to make sure that we market things properly within our business. And she's a good resource for a lot of people in the U.S. And I'm sure that if anybody ever wanted to look her up, they would enjoy listening to her commentary as well. The other thing I do besides ranching, when I quit managing ranches, I decided I would take a job, and I've worked with a couple different places since then. It's been, I don't know, 5, 6 years now, probably. And one of the ones that I first went to work with was a company that was, I was using their supplement, and they were big on gut health, and they did a great job, and their product was awesome. and I can't say enough good about the people or the product, but I will tell you that it got too expensive for our ranch. So I started looking for a gut health product, and that's what this Advanced Ag Products, their flagship product is called BioReg Plus. It's a gut health product that I found that I wanted to incorporate into some type of a range cattle tub. And I talked with the owner and they wanted to, and then one thing led to another, and I left the one that I couldn't afford to feed. And now I'm working with this one with awesome success, and we'll get into low cost supplementation towards the end of this presentation. But just to give you an idea of what I'm doing now, I do help the guys in Canada some with their ruminant sales, but I'm mainly my title is the National Sales Director in the US for Advanced Ag Products. So the things that we were asked to talk about today was philosophy, kind of what we do on our ranch and how it works, and the way that we can do it without having a multi-generational ranch, but being able to be successful and then be able to still have enough money to keep going and do what we love, make a little bit of money. So we're going to touch on some of that stuff and what I think is pertinent to be able to make that happen. And I know everybody's not in the same scenario as me, but I do think that if you choose to want to make money, there's ways to make money in the ranching business, and we'll go over some of those. I think some people are very good at it, and they can make a great living. The way I'm set up right now, I could even do a better job if I wasn't working with the Advanced Ag Products, and I might be able to be 100% ranching, but the way it works out, it just works good. My son's 100% on the ranch, and I am still working, and it's quite the. I mean, it really works well for us because I like helping other people to succeed. We're also going to talk about young stock development, grazing out all year. I believe in trying not to have to haul feed to cattle, and I know it's not always possible and it's not always practical. Sometimes it's cheaper to do another scenario, but we try to graze out all year. And then low cost supplementation. That's what I really enjoy helping people with across the country and the continent. And we have some products that with the company I work with that does a really good job helping people do that. So, and I have this in this first phase of this. I'll tell you some of this stuff came from my training with Ranching for Profit School, and so I mean this isn't anything I came up with, but it's just definitely the way that we operate. So when I was at Ranching for Profit School several years ago, they said, and I may not have this verbatim, but this is kind of how they told us that we could improve profit on a ranch. And I totally agree with them, and we look at these indicators as well. So there's only three ways, is what they said, that we could improve the profit on our ranch, and that is to increase turnover, decrease overheads, or improve gross margin per unit. So, we don't need to go into a lot of depth on that. Most of you guys are probably familiar with those guys. If you're not, I highly recommend and suggest that. But if you just make some notes on that, if you have any questions, we can talk about those individually as we get through this. But I will tell you that I think they're hit it spot on when they came up with those three indicators on how you can improve profit on your ranch. One thing that we do that may or may not be popular, we're not out there, even though we're raising seed stock, we want to raise seed stock that'll actually work for people in an environment that's a little bit challenging. So we don't look at trying to maximize performance. We want optimum performance, and we look at a profit per acre, not a profit per cow. So we're not trying to get the heaviest weaning weights necessarily, if that's going to make us have to put more input into the females. So it's more important to us to run a proper stocking rate, the optimum stocking rate, and to be able to, even if the calves are a little lighter, have more of them. And I think no matter where you're at, there's definitely some type of a debate on what your cow size should be, but I don't think I'm the one that should tell you what your cow size needs to be. I think that depends on the resources on your particular ranch and then you optimize what you can get out of those resources would be the my that's the way I would help people to figure that out. Um, Usually, more times than not, you want to run more cows that take less to thrive. That's kind of the way I put that on the next bullet point. And what I would say with that is, if you got some big cows that require a lot of maintenance, those cows are not going to be as efficient. You're going to have more into that. And then also, even if they raise a little bigger calf, which I would argue most of the time they don't, because if you have those big genetics, a lot of times, unless you're doing something to prop up those cows and calves, you'll outrun your resources on your ranch. So therefore, you would probably, uh, have a lot more into them. But even if you would have a little bit bigger calves with the same amount of cost, you'd have lesser of them. And if they were bigger, they wouldn't be worth quite as much by the pound. So we could do some exercises to explain that. If anybody wants to go into that deeper, when we get to the end of it, we can talk about that as well. So that's the big thing. I am, with the registered stock, we do have an EPD available to us, and we utilize those, and a lot of our customers utilize those. But we look for optimum numbers. If we get too much milk in our country, it actually requires more maintenance on the cow. If we get too much growth, we have to have more cow maintenance and more feed into the cows. And then we like to have a moderate mature cow size. Um, and then, even, it's nice to have a good breed up. And this year we had an awesome breed up, and then we attributed a lot of that to our supplementation, and we were still hard on them. And the weaning weights are acceptable, but I always say when people start talking to me about real high breed ups, which yeah, I can't say much this year because I think we had 97% on a big set of cows running on desert. But I will tell you that usually, extreme highs and breed ups and weaning weights come with a cost. And so, and that's not always a bad thing, but you have to do the math and decide if the juice is worth the squeeze, I guess is the way I'd put that. So diversity too. I mean, when you're working on trying to buy a place and make money and make a living off a ranch, you have to have diversity. So we do run a few sheep. I think that the highest my wife's ever been up to is 160 ewes. We're not that high right now, but we kind of just watch that and we try to make sure that it makes good business sense. And so we run some sheep, try to keep them a little closer to home. They don't go quite as far out to pasture like the cow herd does. But so it makes fun for we also like to raise some border collies, and we like to have good dogs around. So it's good to have to start the dogs. Plus it gives us another revenue stream on the ranch. And you can't get too carried away, but you can run some sheep in with your cows, and ours are not always running together, but it doesn't take a lot more acres. You can still have some sheep and cattle run together, and you'll actually get more out of less. And I think that's the key. Get the most you can out of the land resources you're provided. So that's multi-species is a great way. There's people that do it better than me and people that have other ideas. Our choice was to have some sheep in our mixed. The other thing that I think is very important in our philosophy to be able to do ranching the way that we do it is low overhead. We don't have a lot of excess equipment, just a bare minimum of what we need. I would pride myself on having less tractors and less equipment than rather than be excited to have more. Because even if maybe if it was a tax scenario and I needed to buy something, well, that's a different story. But at this point, what we try to do is look at it as a business, and we try to have the lowest amount of overhead within equipment and extra horses or four-wheelers or side-by-sides or anything like that, just the bare essentials. And that's one way that works for us to be able to do what we love to do and make money on a ranch. Um, Yeah, so the next bullet point I put on there is have assets that appreciate, not depreciate. And so that makes sense to us. I'd rather have something that's gaining in value rather than losing value, which I don't think that takes a lot of extra explanation. And then I try to do this, and because I work off the ranch as well as try to ranch, work on the business. I think it's actually I'm able to do that quite a bit while I'm driving or traveling. So that does help that I have that luxury. But I know a lot of folks, and I consult with some people who, they're just busy all the time and they don't take the time to really sit down and work on the business. It's another principle that I learned with the ranching profit school. And one of the ones that the notable ones I wanted to put on there is marketing. So, you can change the dynamics of your income just by putting some thought into how you market stuff without just doing, the status quo, just trying to figure out a creative way to get the most value out of the stock that you have available to sell or that you're needing to sell. Stocking rate, I think you want to maximize your stocking rate for sure. But what does that look like? I mean, it depends. I mean, sometimes there's an argument that you can graze everything and not put up any feed and buy your feed if you need any. But what I like to encourage people to look at trying to do is figure out a way to graze year round and still not buy any feed. Just have some type of reserve so that if you need it, you can definitely take care of your cattle. And one way that you can really maximize that is to use some multi-cell grazing. I was talking actually to a gentleman in Canada who seems like a really sharp guy, and he's grazing, under pivots or under irrigation at least, straight alfalfa, and he felt like he's grazing 4 times the cattle that he could graze on that place by the way that he's doing that with his cell grazing and the quality of forage he has with the alfalfa. So, you know, I was learning from him, but it sounded like a great plan. And if he wanted to have that much stock is what he figured he could do on that particular ranch, he would have to have 4 times the ranch. So that's the type of stuff where you can really start making some serious money ranching. So. So now, if you have any questions, write those down about anything that I touched on, because I didn't go into with multiple topics for this. I didn't go into great detail on anything, but I just want to touch on them, give you a 50,000-foot view of kind of how we operate. So if you have any feedback or any questions on any of that stuff, we'll get to that at the end. Just kind of make a note and hang on to that, and we will answer those when we get further. Some of the things we do, and we have a lot of different reasons for it, but it is economically friendly as well as the way we develop our young stock. And going back to Stetson, who you saw as a little baby in that slide a few slides ago, that's him this summer. He's going to be 4 in August, but he's getting to be quite a sport. So we put pressure on our young stock to ensure success in the future. And that doesn't matter if it's our sale bulls or our replacement heifers. This picture right here that you'll see is just one that was taken the other day by my son of our sale bulls. And I'll go into how they're developed, but you can see they're not in a feedlot or up in a pen. And these bulls would be born starting the 1st of April, and our sale is the first Saturday in April every year. So, and then replacement heifers, just to kind of run through, and these are the actual replacement heifers I took this winter. But just to run through kind of how we do it. They're weaned on long stem hay. We don't give them any other supplement other than we have a mineral tub that is designed for gut health. But they're weaned on long stem hay for 45 to 60 days. And then ideally, what we try to do, and we do this most years, we turn them out back out with the cows until breeding, and they'll end up running on some crop residue, corn stalks, or something like that. But this year we had extreme scenario. So this year they're actually bale grazing and also um, doing we'll roll out some, we call it biocarpeting, but we roll out some hay, but just give them what they need every day. Don't overdo it. Make them still work for a living. Don't try to put a lot of weight on them. People think we're crazy sometimes when we're AI and heifers, but they don't get very big. But by the end of the grazing season, as a bred heifer, they look just like everybody else's, and we don't have all that extra money into it. And besides that, we put pressure on them that we get the most fertile females. And we've had pretty good breed ups lately, but when we first started operating this way, um, we would have more opens. And for a long time, I felt as if I had more than 85% bred, that I probably wasn't hard enough on them. But now they're getting to be so uniform that, we probably regularly get into the 90% bred on them heifers. But we want to identify those heifers that aren't going to breed when they're stressed like that, so that we can market them while they're still worth something. So if you got a replacement heifer that didn't get bred her first try, she's still got quite a bit of value. Where if we go into, um, you know, get her bred, prop her up, feed her heavy, get her bred, and then when she's a second calver or third calver, if she's open, she's not worth near as much, and we got all that money into her, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So that's the way we like to do it, and that is not maybe the norm. And I would say that there's a lot of people out there that could argue different management strategies there. But that's what this is, just to make you kind of think about ways that you could improve your profitability if that's of interest to you, because you can make money in cattle ranching. I know that to be a fact. The sale bulls, so they're kind of developed like our heifers. Obviously, they never get turned back out with their mothers and the crop residue, but they do run in big, large pastures, and they get fed long stem hay as well. And then we have in Miles City, Montana, we have a plant that makes alfalfa cake, and we don't want to feed quite that much protein, so we have an alfalfa cake that's diluted down with a little bit of grain byproducts. That's probably, I'd have to go back and look at the tag, but I think it's like 14%. And that cake would actually be fed to them at about 1% of body weight, along with the grazing that they have and long stem hay. And this is actually one of the bulls. The picture was just taken recently. My son sent it to me. And it's one of the bulls that'll be for sale this April 5th. And you can see that they, because of our genetics over time and our selection and our development, our cattle kind of crest up at a younger age. The maturation point is at a younger age, and the cattle stay fleshy. In my opinion, that's a fleshy bull. I know if you get to some areas, it's got a lot of excess feed, and some of the seed stock guys that really push performance, he's not going to weigh as much or be as fleshy as some of those, but we like the way they turn out. We keep them hard, athletic, and ready to work. In terms of the cows, you can see some of these. These are my actual cows right here that, and I cut that off. I mean, it's a better picture if I didn't have to cut it off, but those cows stay in good shape. But that's multi-generations of making them graze in the wintertime. And whether it's crop residue or grazing through the snow like these ones are right here, they're moderate framed, easy keeping, big bellied cows that know how to go out and work for a living. And they look good. We try not to do anything excessive. We haven't been doing a lot of extra deworming or delicing, but that takes time too. As years go by without doing it, they actually, the ones that aren't going to stay in the system are gone, and the ones that are going to work for you, they just start working for you. So, and it makes it hard to find replacements sometimes. And I know other people who I respect really think that buying a bred cow is the way to go. But with us selling bulls and whatnot, we pretty much are a closed herd unless we need something, and never say never. And my son's growing, so he buys some low input cattle in different places. But I would say that for the most part, the most successful we can be is by utilizing the genetics that are within our system, and to be able to, keep replacement heifers out of them, put pressure on the replacement heifers, only keep the ones that can make it in our system. And before long, you don't have to put a whole lot into them. And you just keep some forage and some supplement. We use a tub, a mineral tub with no protein or anything, but it's gut health tub, and they'll look like this. This is a bull. They graze out too. We don't try to pamper our bulls. I mean, they don't have a real long season where they have to work, so we like to use your eyes. That's what I tell people. You got to have common sense and use your eyes. But this bull is probably a 4-year-old bull. I took this the other night. He's grazing out, and he's got some long stem hay when he needs it. But you can see he's probably a 5 framer, a little less. He's in really good flesh. He's kind of a stud. We call him Cowhand, but we've got a lot of cattle bred to him this year. But it's not the best picture, and the lighting wasn't that good. But hopefully you can see him. He's the kind of cattle that we like to, and those cattle will work for you. Um, so as far as the young stock and the bred cows, they graze out as much as possible. But I just want to reiterate, you have to use your eyes. You cannot starve a profit into them. You must take proper care of them. But you can, but if you put some, I always tell people a little bit of discipline goes a long ways when you're breeding cattle. And if you get the right type of cattle, you use your eyes and you make sure they got forage and a good supplement, they'll do fine. This is another picture of a sale bull that's going to sell this year that my son took the other day out on range, and they're in pretty good shape without a whole lot of money into them. So, please get all your questions for any of my philosophies in terms of development and genetics, and we'll go into that. And once we get through this, but this last topic that we had was the proper low cost cattle supplementation. And the way we like to do it, and our range cows and the herd bulls, and even the developing bulls and the replacement heifers, we don't feed them the heifers. I mean, the bulls get a cake, but we don't feed them any cake. We try to make them graze. If we have to feed hay, we use our eyes and we feed some hay. But hay's not cheap. So, but these tubs that we have that Advanced Ag Products, who I work with, have, is designed to really stimulate the bugs in the gut. So we work on gut health, but besides that, it's got a essential oil pack that has a special coating on it to get them into the lower, to get these essential oils, real powerful oils, into the lower GI tract, where once it gets there, it's kind of a targeted time release that trickles out across the lower GI tract, and it lowers oxidative stress and increases estradiol. So from a supplementation standpoint, you have to really rethink. It's true supplementation. It's not a feed. So we're trying to enhance the gut and get the gut working properly, and everything else works well. So we're enhancing the gut and the function of the gut to be able to better utilize the forage that they're out grazing, and make healthy cattle, and everything else. If the cattle are healthy and their guts right, everything else works better. That's just kind of our philosophy from that angle. This is another picture of those same tubs and some cattle licking on them. Now all the pictures in this presentation were from my place, but these last few, I didn't have any pictures of mine licking on tubs. So these are actually pictures of an Angus breeder who uses our tubs that I just happen to have in my computer. But yeah, this is the all-around mineral. So you will see there's no protein in that tub, no added protein. There's a little bit just from the ingredients, but the cattle do well on them, and they do it on forage, and it just helps them to make the most out of everything else that they eat. This would be another picture of the all-around mineral tub, and we have other tubs available, but that's the main tub that we utilize when we're out grazing in the winter. And there's no added protein in there, so we're getting the gut right where they can make their own protein. And what we do a lot of times is we watch the manure. If they were to start to stack, if I had a set of cattle on winter range and their manure piles were starting to stack, myself personally, different people do it different ways. I would not add protein in a tub, but we do have that available and it does work. I'd roll out some alfalfa or I would give them some cake. But I can tell you that we do it year over year and we've never had to do that in a long, long time since we've been using this product. Their manure tells the story on whether or not they need any added protein. So, with that being said, there's the last picture of my daughter and I driving some cattle down the road, and this is how you could contact me, and hopefully we can have some good correspondence and some questions now after my short and sweet presentation.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ken.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, now we will open the floor for Q&A session. If you have
Yeah.
any questions, you can write it in the Q&A, or if you are someone who doesn't like typing, you can click the raise hand button and I will allow you to talk. Okay, we have a question. How long do you run your bulls with your heifers and cows?
So the heifers, I like to do the heifers as short as possible because we're trying to get those heifers to uh, we're putting pressure on them. We want those really fertile heifers that are going to work in our system to get bred early, and then we would, pull the bulls, and then we could sell those open heifers. That would be ideal. But on the cows, I have mixed emotions, and we don't do it the same every year. If we feel like it's going to be a year where a bred cow is going to be worth something, we might leave those bulls in a little longer. But we also ultrasound, and like I said, our bull sale is the first Saturday in April. We don't start calving until around the 1st of April. So we can't have late born calves or they wouldn't qualify for our bull sale because they'd be too young. So if I think there's going to be a market for those breds, we would leave the bulls in longer and then sort on them at preg check and keep all the cows that were bred early that would fit in that first month or so. They really, if they get into May, we have some, but they really are too young for the sale. So we don't try to keep very many of those. And so those cattle would be sold as breds, and that's another way when you can kind of get strategic with your marketing.
Perfect. Hopefully that answers your question. Are there
Ideally,
more?
on the heifers, I would say, and I don't always stick to this, but a couple cycles is great on heifers. That would be ideal to maximize getting those fertile heifers and getting those, um, having those other heifers that were open to market and merchandise.
Perfect. Are there more questions? Let's wait for a minute or two in because
Yeah, no
sometimes
problem.
it takes longer for a few people to type.
One thing I should say too, just while if there's anybody listening before we get another question is you have to be, I mean, I think depending on the size of your ranch, like when I ran big ranches and stuff, I think you need to probably have some new genetics from a source that would have proper genetics that would help you to get to where you want to be. I feel like you need to go look at their management and their cattle and make sure that their cattle are the type of cattle that you want to get to. But I think big ranches should consider raising their own bulls. And that doesn't sound very normal coming from a guy who's selling bulls, but it's hard to compete, and our bulls do a pretty good job. That's what we strive for. But it's hard to compete when you have to find bulls to bring into a new system and have them excel. And you have to be careful not to get some, for lack of a better term, mainstream breeders that are really pushing the envelope in terms of performance and whatnot. It's hard to get those cattle to come in and work for you. On a terminal cross, that's one thing. But if you gotta be like a lot of my customers, they need to keep their own replacement heifers because just like if they go buy heifers, a lot of times those will have a lot of fallout because they weren't managed and raised in the same scenario as what you have at home. So if you and the same things with a bull. If you have bulls that are coming from a pampered ranch, so to speak, a lot of times that hurts you all more of the ways than you know. Not only do they fall off once they get there, I mean, we like our bulls when people get them. I want them to gain weight during breeding season. And if you got bulls that are going to lose weight and you don't even recognize them in 6 months after you've owned them, after they've been breeding cows, then that's kind of hard to do. And I think those larger ranches could benefit from having stuff that's at least go find a producer producing bulls that would be um, uh, the kind of bulls that would thrive in your environment or maybe just making some out of your best cows.
Perfect. We got a new question for you. How does grazing fit into your operation in terms of profitability and efficiency?
And how does grazing fit into my operation in terms of profitability?
Yeah,
Grazing
and efficiency.
I say, and I'm not the one that came up with this either. I've heard this and I believe it and I agree with it. Anytime that you put a machine in between forage and a cow, you're costing money. So grazing is what we try to do 100%. And it's really for us, it's the only way to be profitable. The cost and overhead to have the equipment and also or to buy the hay that somebody else put up it's not practical. We run the numbers every year, obviously, and we try to source our hay, quality hay at a low price, the hay that we need. But yeah, it always costs more money if you have to um, prepare it and haul it out there, and So I mean, there's scenarios where it probably works. I mean, especially that. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the same for everybody, but in our scenario, we have to graze or we're not profitable. When we get to the point where we're feeding, we're losing money.
Perfect. Are there more questions? There you go, another question. Do
Good.
you see the value of importing nutrients into your operation by buying hay?
Oh yeah, definitely. If I had my choice, I mean, if you take the hay off of a place, you're going to have to give something back, right? If you can graze it and bring in another person's, I mean, what they took off their land and roll that out or bale graze it on your place, the nutrients are they're worth a lot. They're worth as much as the feed almost. And depending on if you're trying to build up new ground. So like right now, where I have to feed my heifers, I'm putting that on my worst ground and I'm rolling out hay and bale grazing there just for that fact. And I don't expect them to eat it all. And if they do, that's great because we just limit feed them. But any residue that's left there, plus the manure and urine in that general area, it's you can't even I don't even know what the calculation would be to measure what that's worth, but that's worth a lot.
Perfect. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and I'll go into that. We would have grazed our heifers with our cows this year, but in our region, there are some sugar beets. So the reason why we didn't graze out with the cows this year is because you have to use your eyes, right? And you have to use your brain. There was this in this big area that we leased that has crop residue in it. There was a section in there that had a little bit of sugar beets, which usually isn't a problem. Grazing sugar beet tops is kind of normal in my area, and then you can get by with that, and you might get a choke or two. But in this particular year, it was wet when they harvested, so they weren't able to harvest them all. And the farmer we lease off of, he had already been in there and chisel plowed. So all the beets that they didn't harvest were on top of the ground after he chisel plowed. And we had excessive choke on the replacement heifers, and it didn't bother the cows as bad. We had some on the cows too, but we got through it. But we did have the heifers out grazing with the cows, and we gathered them up and brought them back home because we just couldn't withstand the loss. So we had to make a decision to try to build up some soil, like you were saying, by feeding the heifers on some dormant ground that didn't have enough grazing for them. But so we'll take advantage of a bad scenario where we were losing cattle for choking on sugar beets, the smaller, younger ones that didn't have as big a throat, you know. We were losing them, so we were going to take advantage of a bad situation, and now we're going to build some soil with some purchased hay.
Perfect. Do you want to add? So there you go. There's another question.
Yeah.
How do you water your cattle in the winter?
So, like most of the time, we try to find live water, but I have used and where the heifers are this year, we have a tank that we buy out of we run water lines, pipelines, and then we have a tank we buy out of Canada. It's called a Stock Boss tank, and we like those real well. But that's not the only thing we use. We have tire tanks and gravity from a spring on some of our grazing areas that we're just grazing dead forage in the wintertime. It it just depends. It's always a challenge. I mean, we're cold too, not as cold as you guys, but those Canadian Stock Boss tanks, I'll endorse those. Those have been great since we've installed a half a dozen of those or so. We've been very happy with those.
I guess I don't see any more questions. Is there anything else you would to add before we're done with the webinar?
No, I would just encourage, I'd love to meet people. If anybody has nutrition questions as far as how I can help with our supplementation, genetic questions, or if they just want overall management advice, I mean, I'm happy to talk to anybody anytime. My number's right here, my email's right here, and I'm always enthusiastic to meet new people. And I probably learn as much from you as you could from me. But I like to put heads together and see if we can figure out an answer to a problem or a solution to a problem.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ken, for answering those questions and for an amazing presentation. It was
Yeah, no
truly,
problem.
yeah, it was truly a pleasure to have you with us today. That brings us to the end of the
You froze up a little bit. I didn't hear everything you said, but thank you. Thanks for having me, and hopefully it was helpful for somebody. I don't claim to know a lot, but I know what I'm doing works for me.
yeah,
We good?